Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's webinar on Inventory Management Best Practices, Tips for Managing Inventory More Efficiently. I'm Megan Castillo. I'm a Senior Solution Specialist here at Freestyle Solutions, and I'll be taking you through today's presentation. For today's webinar, I'm going to start out with a brief introduction about Freestyle Solutions and our experience as it pertains to today's webinar. Then I'll dive into some of the specific challenges surrounding the e-commerce environment from an inventory management perspective, followed by why effective inventory management is critical and some of the key questions you can be asking yourselves in order to diagnose your own inventory health. Then we'll dive into how to deal with those challenges and some of the different options that are available. Please note that there is a questions panel located on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to use those as we're going through the presentation, and I'll wrap up with any of your questions at the end. So a little brief background about Freestyle Solutions. Freestyle Solutions has been providing inventory and order management solutions to solve the business automation needs of retailers, fulfillment centers, and direct marketers for over 25 years. We have over 2,000 active merchants, and we're also a company started by retailers. So we've really get a great understanding of our customers as well as some of the challenges, especially when it comes to inventory that you might be experiencing. We do have two solutions ourselves. We have our on-premise software multi-channel order manager, or what we refer to as MOM, and then we have our cloud-based solution, Freestyle Commerce. With all of our time in the industry, we've developed a great reputation in inventory and order management, and that, coupled with our own experience, is also how we've gained our knowledge for today's webinar. So the same item selling twice to two different buyers. The issue of the day is about managing inventory when you're selling through multiple channels. You know, at the end of the day, there's so many different options and so many places where your customers can be these days, whether it be on your website, Amazon, eBay, the many other marketplaces there are there. And, you know, from your standpoint, you need to be everywhere your customer is, which means diversifying yourself. But with that comes a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to managing your inventory. So for example, you know, let's say I've got 10 items. You know, I sell 5 on my e-commerce site, I sell 5 on Amazon, but wait, now I've just sold 2 more on eBay. And now I've put myself in a predicament. You know, either I'm in a back order situation or I have to go back and tell the customer, you know, I just can't fulfill your order, and you know, that can either end up in either putting them in that back order, or you might even lose the customer because they've got different options. You know, if you don't have it available, I'm sure there's somebody else that does. So how do you deal with that? And that's what today's multi-channel environment has created in terms of the challenges in managing your inventory. So how does this type of situation happen? Well, the key issue up here at the top is the lack of integration between your e-commerce store and your other sales channels. Now, you all know that, you know, getting 2 systems to speak is sometimes a challenge in itself. Well, now, like we said, when you're working in that multi-channel environment, you may be having, you know, 4 or 5, maybe even more channels than that you now need to all sync together. And the integration between those channels is really key in terms of not only, you know, the basis or the lack of integration is the basis of your problem, but the seamless integration is also the basis of your solution. So we really need to look at the integration of these different sales channels. You know, moving further down, again, listing your products in multiple marketplaces. Again, when you're selling on all these different sales channels in that multi-channel environment, it all goes back to the integration and making sure that if I'm selling that same item on more than one sales channel, am I able to make sure that my inventory levels are always up to date? Am I available to sell that's being published out to those particular channels? Now, in some cases, some of you don't have a system doing this for you, and so you're manually entering and updating your inventory levels. Well, you know, there's a whole slew of problems that come with that. Not only, you know, are you risking manual data entry, instead of typing 5, maybe you've typed 55 or so forth. But the other options is that you're never going to be in sync. There's no way that you can, in real time, be updating all of your different sales channels as orders are coming in. The other thing to take into consideration is that, the internet, it lives and breathes 24/7. So you can be receiving orders from different parts of the country in the middle of the night. And if you don't have a staff, someone on staff constantly updating that inventory levels, well, obviously you're going to be out of sync at some point. And that kind of plays into failing to keep track of your inventory in the real-time basis from all of your sales channels. So when I am selling an item on more than one sales channel, I want to make sure when I'm pulling in that order and securing inventory for the order on, say, my Magento store, that at that very same time as I'm updating or securing my inventory, I'm also updating that new available to sell level out to all of my other sales channels. And finally, number 5, accounting for the items returned in inventory. So when you're receiving inventory, from a return, not every time is it going to be pushed back onto the shelves and pushed out to sell. But you probably have some sort of process in place. I know we have customers that have a bin, a return bin in place. So they receive the items in the return bin, and then after they've gone through the QA process and determined whether or not the item was resellable, then they'll push that inventory update over and update their live pick bin, which is going to update their available to sell levels. So again, looking at all these different points that we have here on the screen, everything goes back to the integration, or in some cases the lack thereof, which leads to that problem. So why is effective inventory management critical? Well, how do we deal, in addition to that, why is it important? A lot of it goes back to the customer satisfaction and your perception in the marketplace. So in today's environment, just as well as everyone can search and buy your products in so many different marketplaces, the internet has also opened up a whole slew of other options for customers in terms of blogging and talking about your products. So today, an unhappy customer can make a really big splash by way of social media, etc. So you really have to make sure that you as the merchant protect yourselves by avoiding that problem and avoiding any issues with delivering on your orders. The last thing you want is for a customer to complain and say, well, this person, they put me in back order. I ordered it and they didn't have it, or they didn't deliver in time, whatever the case may be. You do not want negative press in this case because it spreads like wildfire. So that customer satisfaction, that first bullet point, that's really what it mainly comes down to. But some other areas of why it's important: minimizing your cost associated with holding too much inventory. So just as you can have the problem with running out of inventory, if you're not managing your inventory properly, you can also be holding too much inventory. And that's money that's tied up in resources that you don't necessarily need. Avoiding lost sales, minimizing your back orders and cancellations. So going back to the initial problem we talked about, selling the same item twice. Again, as I mentioned, you don't have it, guess what? Somebody else out there does. So not only do you run into that back order situation, but that customer may say, you know what, forget them, I'm going to go on to so-and-so who I can get it delivered tomorrow. And so not only are you in a back order, but then you might wind up just losing that order and that potential customer altogether. Reducing your cash tied up in inventory. Again, you have too much inventory, you've got too much cash tied up there. You could be putting it into your marketing efforts or, branding and stuff like that to really promote more sales. And then maximizing your sales by optimizing your inventory. So the key here is balance. Balance is everything, and you want to have the optimal mix of your inventory levels at all times. So some of the questions that you can be asking yourself to see how you stand. Are you able to track what's available to sell versus what is on hand? Now, some of you may be saying, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference here. It's absolutely not the same thing, because your available to sell versus what is on hand is what you have, is the difference between what you have in processing versus what's actually on the shelves. So available to sell is what you actually have available to sell, meaning what inventory you have left. So say, for example, I have 5 items and I sell 1. Well, when that sale is taken in, you should be detracting one item and pushing out a new available to sell as 4. Even though physically you still have 5 in your warehouse because that first order hasn't been shipped out, it's not truly what you have available to sell because it's been secured and put away for an order. So you need to be able to tell the difference between the physical inventory count that's in the warehouse still versus that's actually available to sell, meaning accounting for those that are in the processing stages. Number 2, are updates automatically published to all the sales channels automatically? This goes back to what we were talking about, integration, and the fact that, you know, the internet allows for people to shop 24/7. You need to make sure that your sales channels are updated at all times. Again, you can't go back to the manual way because there's delays involved, and you'll inherently always be out of sync. You receive an order at 3 in the morning, and you don't have a worker that comes in till, say, 8 or 9 in the morning. By the time they recognize and account for all the orders that came in overnight and then update those sales channels, guess what? You probably had another order or 2 come in, hopefully. And so you're never going to be in sync at that point. Number 3, can you determine minimum inventory keep per SKU? This goes back to being able to put a low level on each item. And this is important because, you know, depending on the types of products you sell, some of your products might have long lead times. So rather than waiting till you hit absolute 0 to get warned that you need to reorder, you may want to set a low level on a product to say, you know, 15 or 20 units or whatever you feel that you need to have in stock at all times in order to allow for your lead time. So can you do this? And also, if you can set these low levels, are there any kind of alerts in place to alert you that you're either approaching at or near that low level so that you know when to reorder? Number 4, can you identify items used for kits or assembled packages and track them properly? So what I mean by a kit, essentially, you know, some of you sell single items on their own, some of you sell groupings. You know, perhaps, say, I'm looking here at my desk and I have a mouse and a mouse pad. Well, I may sell this mouse individually as well as the mouse pad, but then maybe I have a group offering of the mouse and mouse pad for a special price. Well, I need to be able to account for the inventory for those individual items because I have them listed on my site, but I also need to be able to account for the available to sell of that package or duo. So with that, you have to have some sort of system in place that can allow you to calculate, how many kits can be assembled or assembled on demand, basically based on the unit count or inventory count of those individual units. Number 5 here on the screen. So are you able to automatically update inventory levels when inventory is received on a purchase order? So again, this goes back to integration. It also goes back to being able to track your inventory and also integrating your vendor management and your ordering into whatever system that you're managing your inventory, and then leading into publishing out those automatic updates. So if you have a good system in place, hopefully you'll be able to do your purchasing out of that system, and when you've received the inventory, you know, let's go back to my mouse example. Say, you know, I had 10 in stock and then I just received a purchase order for 20 more. Upon receiving that, not only should I update my main inventory database with the 30 units, but at the same time I want to be able to automatically publish out to all of my sales channels that sell that mouse that I now have 30 units. Again, everything's going back to that integration and keeping things nice and seamless and automated to make sure that you're always in sync at all times. So let's talk about some of the things that you can be doing to either resolve and or prevent these inventory management issues from occurring. So once again, you know, looking at number 1 here, the real-time inventory updates. As we've said a couple of times so far today, people can order at all times of the day. And if you're manually updating versus automatically updating your inventory levels, you're essentially always going to be out of sync. So you need that system in place to be able to update on a 24/7 basis so that if that order comes in at 1, 2 in the morning, your inventory is updated at that time and not at 9 a.m. the next working day or whenever that person gets around to that. It all goes back to the idea that the timing is key so that you can avoid overselling and, you know, tricking yourself into thinking I have inventory when you really don't, just because you haven't accounted for the other orders that have come in from your other sales channels. Second bullet here, utilizing an inventory management software. So this is, you know, an inventory management software system is just one component. And, you know, this is a type of component that we provide as a solution. We provide solutions that manage both your orders and your inventory so we can keep that in sync at all times. As I mentioned before, when that order comes in, we're going to actually reserve or secure that inventory and then publish out the new available to sell. And that's where you get that difference between the actual inventory stock level versus what's actually available to sell. The whole inventory and order management, it goes hand in hand. You know, and now we go back to the key piece that we mentioned earlier, and that's the integration. So looking at some of the bullets underneath here, you know, not only do you have an inventory management piece in place as a component, but you want to make sure that it's tightly integrated with your other systems. You need to have that seamless integration to both your e-commerce platform and all the other marketplaces that you sell on, you know, whether it be the Amazons, the eBays, or even taking into consideration your phone orders. You know, some of you take phone orders. So within that system, you need to be able to update those so you can update your inventory levels as well. And we have to get all that into the same workflow. You know, again, managing multiple sales channels, and that's what we're talking about with all the different sales channels, the marketplaces, the phone orders, etc., getting it all in the same workflow. Managing inventory in multiple locations. Can you do that? Do you have multiple warehouses? How are you managing your inventory? How are you deciding which location to choose inventory from when an order comes down? Do you have a system in place that helps you determine, you know, anything from the East Coast, from, you know, this half of the United States over is going to be pulled from my East Coast warehouse to cut down on my shipping costs versus, you know, from here on west is going to go for my West Coast. Do you have a system in place like that? Will you be alerted when when inventory levels are too low? Well, first and foremost, can you put a low level in place? Do you have the capabilities to do so? And then once you have those low levels in place, again, do you have the alert in place? Otherwise, it's really no good. And processing returns, how are you handling that? You know, we talked about that briefly before. Do you have return bins set up so that you can receive that inventory, and then once it's been QA'd and decided that it's suitable enough to go back for sale, how are you handling putting that back into your inventory? All of these things together are what an effective inventory management solution can do as a component in your overall inventory and order management space. So at this point, I'm going to actually flip over and I'm going to show you, transition over and look at one of our solutions, and we're actually going to look at Freestyle Commerce today, and I just want to show you what some of your options are in terms of systems and what you should be able to put in place to address the challenges and the solutions that we've just proposed. So let's go over here, and I've gone in and moved over and make sure I'm sharing my screen here. I am. So I've gone into Freestyle. Now, Freestyle is our cloud-based solution, so everything's done online. When you first log into Freestyle, this is your dashboard view. But I'm actually going to go right into the products, and I want to show you some of the different things that we talked about just today alone about how you can be better managing your products and your inventory. So I'm going to come over to my product screen, and I'm going to actually bring up a particular product just so I can show you some examples of what I was talking about today. So I'm going to pull up this particular product record. And here you can see this is the main product info tab where I have the product details associated with this particular product. And you'll notice there's a couple tabs on the side here. So this first one, sales channels. So this is where I'm talking about being integrated with all your different sales channels and marketplaces. So this particular ring, I happen to sell on my e-commerce platform, which in this case I have a Magento store that I'm using as my dummy store. And then I also sell it on Amazon. And right here from my sales channel tab, I can assign this product to both of those channels. Again, we want to make sure that we have seamless integration. So I can add as many sales channels as I want. If I want to say I want to also sell this, on yet another e-commerce store, and I also want to add eBay or any of the other many marketplaces you have out there, you can add each one of those line items here and assign that product so it shows up on that particular sales channel. Then when there's any update to the inventory on that particular product, each and every sales channel on this tab is going to get that real-time update, making sure that you're in sync at all times. Now you'll notice here on the sales channel tab, you do have the ability, if you wanted to, add an alias SKU, change the product name, and or even change the retail price, which you can see here I've done on my particular web store. I'm selling this product for $115, but I've decided to raise it on Amazon to $120. And all of that can be managed and pushed out right from here within Freestyle out to your sales channels. So Freestyle essentially is going to become your hub. It's going to become your central inventory management piece, which is really what, if it's not Freestyle that you're using, whatever system you're using, this is what you should have in place. This is that central hub that's going to then push out all of your updates and make sure that all of your sales channels are in sync. Going back to, once again, integration. On the inventory tab, let's scoot over here for a second, and we can look at some of these things we have here. So in Freestyle, the way we have it set up is we have these top 4 basic buckets are assigned for each product. And the way we have it broken out are available. And this is your available to sell number. This number right here, 42 units, is what's pushed out right now to my Magento store and in this case Amazon, saying that I've got 42 of these rings available to sell. Now in reality, I actually have 42 plus the 3 here that are committed for a total of 45 in my warehouse. But these 3 right here are committed, meaning they're committed to an outstanding order. So physically, they may still be in stock in my warehouse, but they've already been committed, so they're not available to sell. They're going to stay in this committed stage until they've actually been released and shipped. So at that point, without drilling further into this right now, they're either in the picking or the packing stages, but yet have not been shipped. The point being, though, is that they've been subtracted from my available because they're no longer available for sale. And this way we can avoid that whole initial question we started with the idea of selling the same item twice. So going back to this, so the available is what my available to sell is. Committed is what I have committed on order. So these 3 are in the processing stages. Again, whether they're in the picking or packing, they just yet haven't been shipped. If for some reason an order gets kicked back and canceled along the way, and say only 2 out of the 3 actually get shipped, then that 1 will be kicked back to my available, and my available to sell levels will be updated to all my sales channels. On order, this is so you can see if you have any on order from a purchase order standpoint, because you will be managing purchase orders from within Freestyle, and then back ordered, obviously, if you had any that are back ordered. Moving a little further down the screen, you'll see I have this box right here called my product low level. Now, for this particular product, I've set a low level of 15 units. In addition to that, you can set your threshold, and this can be unique to you. So for me, I actually have a threshold of 5 units. Now, what I mean by that is when I get within 5 units of this 15, so once I hit 20 available to sell up here, I'm actually going to see this product show up on one of my real-time dashboards that I have, warning me that I'm approaching my low-level reorder point. And we'll go into that widget in just a second. So that is your product low level. before I move over to that low-level dashboard, or that low-level widget, I just want to mention one other thing. On the product level itself, you can also see any and all warehouses that you have assigned to that product. Now, in this case, I only have that product assigned to my East Coast warehouse. But Freestyle is a multi-warehouse system, so you can have 1, 2, 3, as many warehouses as you want, and you would see all of those warehouses associated with that item below here on this particular inventory tab on the product. And as I mentioned, a convenience to have in place is being able to decide which warehouse to choose from based on the ship-to address. This way you can minimize your costs. That functionality is built into Freestyle. So based on the geographical location of the ship-to, not the bill-to, but the ship-to, in case they're shipping to somebody else. You know, I'm shipping to my cousin on the West Coast. I live on the East Coast, but Freestyle is going to choose my West Coast warehouse because that's closest to the end customer. So if I had more than one warehouse assigned here, we would choose based on that ship-to location. In addition to managing the inventory, as I mentioned, we do manage these suppliers. So you want to integrate that purchase order management into your inventory management system. All of that should be happening in one system so that, as we talked about earlier, when I receive inventory from a purchase order, it'll update automatically not only in the product record itself, but also push out to all the different sales channels I have. Okay, let me go back to what I was talking about with that low level real quick. Again, folks, if you have any questions as we're going through, you know, I'm showing Freestyle as an example of some different options you have out there. If you have any particular questions, whether it pertains to Freestyle itself or just inventory management, best practices in general, please feel free to use that questions panel that's located on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, so I've actually flipped screens over to the main screen when you log into Freestyle. So now the way Freestyle works is it's a named user system. So each individual user has their own unique login. And when each user logs in, they're presented with what we call the dashboard view, which is what you're looking at. And on this dashboard, you can make up this view based on many different real-time widgets that we have available. Now, if I quickly say change dashboard, you can see these are the different types of widgets that we have available. The user's access to which widgets they can add to their dashboard will be based on their role. Now, I'm logged in as an admin, so I have access to all of them, but that's something that we help you when setting up the system. We help you set up the roles, and the user's access to both the widgets as well as the reports and the areas of the system is all going to be based on the role that you set up for them. In any event, someone like your operations manager or someone, you know, in charge of inventory and purchasing, they would most likely have this widget right here, which is your product low-level alert. And this is that widget that I was talking about that goes back to the low level that we just looked at on the individual product level. So here, this particular widget, again, this is all live data. So each one of these, as I hover over, you see the hand appears. I can actually drill into them. And with this particular widget, I'm going to be able to see which items are either below, at, or approaching the low level that I've set for that product. Now, in my case, I told you that I set my threshold to be 5 units. So I have 5 products that are just within 5 units of that low level that I've set on those particular products. In this case, let's drill into the 2 that I have below. And it'll bring me into the SKU level, but I can actually go right into the product itself. And if I come to my inventory tab, you can see that I've got 15 available to sell, but my product low level was 20 units. So I am, in fact, below that low level. At this point, I can go ahead and create a purchase order and order this dress to replenish my stock. So that low-level widget is actually really helpful from an ordering perspective. Again, it's pulling on live data, so every time you log in, whoever's in charge of ordering, they can see the live numbers. And, you know, as I'm sitting here, I could have had another dress sell on another unit, and that number right here approaching might have gone from 5 to 6. So it's all live data, and it just keep you in sync and keep you on top of your ordering. One other thing to mention, I'm actually going to go back to the product section. One of the other things we talked about in the presentation was being able to manage your kit or bundled products. So I'm going to click over here in Freestyle. We have our kit products actually separated out in a different tab. And I'm going to go into one of my product records. And you can see I've got a kit right here. It's my bat and ball combo. And you can see from the image here I sell, a 2-pack of baseballs along with the bat as a combination. Now here on the left-hand side, I have another tab that was added when I made this kit, this product type a kit, and that's my components tab. Now on my components tab, this is where you assign which particular items make up that kit. Now I sell both this youth slugger bat as well as my baseball individually on the website, and then I sell them as components as part of this kit. Here on this tab is where I've assigned the ratio. So in this case, I'm doing a 1-to-1 ratio, and that can change. You decide what the ratio is. But here I'm assigning that it's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, and this is my available to sell on an individual level. So individually, I've got 42 bats available, and I've got 238. But obviously, I cannot sell more than 42 of the kits because I only have 42 bats. So when we come over to our inventory tab, you'll notice that in addition to these top 4 tabs that we had before, I now have 2 additional, this purple and blue one down here, which account for my kits pre-assembled, meaning kits that I have pre-assembled on the shelf ready to go that have already been accounted for from an inventory standpoint, and then I have my can be assembled. Now, the can be assembled is going to be based on the lowest common denominator of those inventory units, those individual inventory units. So in this case, I've got 82, and then my total available to sell is going to be the summation of the pre-assembled and the can be assembled. So in this case, it's the 5 plus the 82, which is 87. And that is the inventory level, the available to sell level that's going to be pushed out to all of my sales channels. Okay. So that kind of highlights some of the areas that we talked about in the PowerPoint just now. I am going to flip back over now to the PowerPoint. For those of you who are interested in learning more about Freestyle, folks, I apologize. There we go. Sorry, we got stuck there for a second. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about Freestyle, this flowchart right here actually just kind of illustrates how the order process works with Freestyle and where Freestyle sits in terms of your orders and getting them processed and the whole inventory management aspect. So with Freestyle, the way it works is whether you are using, Magento or BigCommerce or Mozu or one of the other e-commerce platforms out there for your main website, and perhaps you're selling on Amazon and eBay, etc., all of your sales channels are all going to be funneled into Freestyle. So when an order comes in from one of these sales channels, it's going to be downloaded into Freestyle automatically. We're going to reserve that inventory. At the same time reserving that inventory, we're going to push that new stock level back to the other sales channels that that product is sold on. And then that order is going to end up in your warehouse so that you can go through your pick, pack, and ship processes. So within Freestyle, we try to offer a comprehensive solution, meaning aside from your e-commerce platform, Freestyle is the only other thing you're going to need. We're going to manage your inventory, your suppliers, your ordering, your whole pick, pack, and ship processes right from within Freestyle. So we have seamless integrations with UPS and USPS. For FedEx, DHL, any other shipping providers you're using, we also seamlessly integrate with ShipStation and ShipWorks. Picking and packing always occurs in Freestyle. If you're using ShipStation or ShipWorks, you do the actual shipment out of those solutions, but then once the order's shipped, Freestyle gets the shipment confirmation and tracking number, and it pushes that out to your customer as well as your sales channel. So we're going to make sure that your sales channels, your customers, everybody's in sync at all times, and we're going to do that on a nice automated basis. For those of you who drop ship, we can help you with the drop ship management as well. When an order comes in that is a drop ship order, Freestyle flags that order and automatically generates the PO for you. All you have to do is log in and submit it to your supplier. Once the supplier confirms that it's been shipped and sends you the tracking information, you update that in Freestyle, and Freestyle will trigger those same series of automated events, which include updating the tracking information and the completed status out to both your sales channel and your customer. So again, all of those processes from the time you receive the order on your sales channel to the time your customer receives it, all done in one solution, which increases your efficiency and avoids manual error. Here on the screen, just showing you some of the systems that Freestyle integrates with to help increase your efficiency and productivity. Again, from an e-commerce standpoint, we seamlessly integrate with Magento, BigCommerce, and Mozu as your main e-commerce platform. We also integrate with Amazon and eBay. For any and all other e-commerce platforms and or marketplaces, we do have an API that you can use for integrating those. From a shipping standpoint, we integrate with UPS and USPS directly. FedEx is done through ShipWorks or ShipStation. And also if you do use any of the other shipping methods provided by ShipWorks or ShipStation, you can do that from there as well. From a payments perspective, for any orders that you take, phone orders, you can enter those directly into Freestyle. Again, integrating all your different sales options, so you need to account for the inventory for those phone orders as well. So with the phone orders, you can enter them directly into Freestyle. From a payment perspective, all the payments are done through Authorize.net, and we have integration with Avalara's AvaTax product for calculating the sales tax properly. And then, of course, the accounting. You can't forget that. So once all of the transactions are completed, you need to be able to send over the transactional data so you can manage your books efficiently and get proper financial reporting. So with that, Freestyle is going to push that information over to your QuickBooks. So right now we integrate with QuickBooks Desktop. We are going to be adding QuickBooks Online later on this year. But in the meantime, QuickBooks is going to go back to doing what it was natively designed for, and that's accounting. So you won't be managing your inventory there anymore. You'll be managing it in Freestyle so you can make sure that all those inventory updates are done properly and automatically out to your different sales channels. And that wraps up our presentation for today. So I hope you all found this helpful. Try to just, again, go over some of the importance. When you think about it, it all goes back to that integration. That's the biggest problem with working in that multi-channel environment, making sure that your sales channels are all on the same page. It's done automatically, it's done in real time, etc. And that's where we have solutions such as our Freestyle and Mom solution. On the screen here now is my contact information. Again, I'm Megan Castillo. It's megan.c@freestylesolutions.com. My number is 800-474-5760, extension 258. If you're interested in learning more about either Freestyle or our other product, Mom, please feel free to reach out to me. Or if you have any other questions that I can help you with from an inventory management perspective, maybe it has nothing to do with the systems, by all means, feel free to reach out, and I will do my best to help you. Thank you, everyone, for joining me, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye now.